We're on. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Hanover Selectboard meeting of April 3rd, 2023. Here tonight to have some fun and do good work for the town. As always, the first order of business is public comment. David? Just a preview for public comment with the guidelines. It's just, let me read them to you. It's our practice to provide an opportunity for public comment at the start of each meeting. Comments or questions should be directed to me as chair and are limited to 5 minutes so that we can keep the meeting flowing. If your comment is on an agenda item, please hold it until the agenda item is taken up. Responses, if any, will be provided at my discretion. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address before you speak. David.
My name is David Vincelette. I live at 93 Lebanon Street. Peter Christie had me arrested 3 times for exceeding a 5-minute speech period that he has begun to consider as part of the law of what can be done here at the select meeting. I'd like to read into the minutes his affidavit to the Hanover Police Department after he had me arrested after speaking. He stopped me after less than 5 minutes, but he had me arrested after 5 minutes. Here's what he said. As chair of the Hanover Selectboard, I recognize Mr. Vincelette under public comment at the Hanover Select meeting on July 25th, 2022. Mr. Vincelette is a frequent speaker under public comment, often repeating the same injustices he feels the town, the Select Board in general, and me specifically have inflicted on him. I have learned over time that it is counterproductive to respond to his questions or assertions, but rather to just allow him 5 to 10 minutes to speak. After about 5 minutes, I ask him to finish up and give him a few more minutes to speak, after which I ask him to leave the presentation table. He usually reluctantly complies and leaves the meeting. At our July 25th, 22 meeting, I followed the above procedure and after about 10 minutes, directed Mr. Vincelette to step down. He refused and became even more agitated than usual, at which point the Select Board voted at my request to recess the meeting until such time as Mr. Vincelette was no longer disrupting the meeting. The Select Board then moved to an adjoining room. At the request of the police chief, at the request of the police, Athos Racius, vice chair, entered the conference room to again direct Mr. Vincelette to step down. Submitted by Peter Christie, chair, Hanover Selectboard. Now, it doesn't seem like it's really in the interest of Hanover to stop public comment after 5 minutes and then tell the police that you didn't stop it until after 10 minutes when it's all on videotape. Any fool can go back and look at it, Peter. Now, I've been coming to you trying to bring state and federal crimes to your attention because the selectmen have an obligation, a duty to this public to see that these problems go to the police and that they're dealt with. You've hired a new town manager who's been there 9 months and yet has never returned a phone call. I've told him that you all are criminals who violated our civil rights. First you polluted the water, and then when we complained about it, you put a fence around us, held us hostage in a concentration camp for 25.5 months with the fire chief and the police chief and the housing chief all allowing you to do it and get away with it. It's a federal crime, 18 U.S.C. 242, to house people as slaves without their constitutional rights in a closed space. Now, the federal government, the FBI, is the entity who is supposed to investigate. And you've done nothing, and the police department has done nothing to get them to come here and begin an investigation of federal crimes. Now, I've had 3 hearings because they had me. Because I was arrested, I had to go to trial, and I'm not going to bore you with what I've written to the judge. It's too long. But I just think it's time, Peter, to call in federal authorities and start answering questions. It's not right that you hold some people, one person in all of Hanover, who you do not allow to ask questions. That's a violation of the Constitution. The state Constitution requires you to be responsive, and the town meeting rules require you to be responsive. But you're not responsive. You've stonewalled me for over 6 years about federal crimes, refusing to answer my questions. And I wonder when, if ever, is it going to end, Peter?
The second order of business is I hereby open a public hearing for the issuance of bonds and notes related to the Water Capital Improvement Replacement Plan. Peter, for the audience, this is not new to us at all. We've discussed this many times prior to and during, well, over many years, and certainly during all the budget hearings. But tonight we have a public hearing where we need to, approve bringing this to town meeting formally. Is that that's the objective? So Peter, can you give us an overview?
Sure. This is Pete Kubacki, Director of Public Works. So in 2010, the town municipalized the Hanover Waterworks Company, and part of the reason for doing that was so that we would be better able to make capital improvements because of a private company the size of Hanover Waterworks Company. There was not ability to raise capital enough to do critical main replacements throughout our system. Part of the assumption of the assets of Hanover Waterworks Company was also assuming two of their loans. One of them was for a project that occurred 20 plus years ago. The second was a water treatment plant. The first loan was paid off last year, so the bonding capacity was built into the budget. So we've come forward with a plan back in 2016 to look at how we actually tackle this century-old problem, where many of our pipes are well over 70 years old, roughly 2/3 of the pipes within our distribution system. So this is the first phase of what we expect to be phases over the next 40 or 50 years, and continuing every 20 years probably, staggering projects to really get on top of water mains. But specifically this project is to tackle not just first section, which would probably be the Maple Street area, but also there's a new rule that EPA has come out with regarding lead services. We have had historically records of lead goosenecks, that connection between the service and the main. We found some old pipes in some of the older sections of town. We don't have any lead services, but there may be some lead goosenecks that still are out there. So part of the funding that the state requires us to go find those and have a plan to replace them. So we will replace the ones in the areas that we encounter in this first phase. And these mains in that section of town are the sort of areas where we potentially find those sort of mains. So it's intentional to try to cover both areas. There's well over almost 200,000 feet of pipe. We don't think that over all of our lifetimes that we'll ever see those replaced, but they don't need to be. But we do have a pretty energetic plan where this first phase would take place, take approximately 3 years from start to finish. And then when the second bond is paid off, we would come back for another bond to do a similar size project for additional water main. So this is just really part of that capital plan that was produced back in 2016.
Okay. So in your note to us, you mentioned that this particular bond would cover about half of the highest priority items.
Yes.
And the plan is for the second half to be dealt with as a part of another bond when one of our existing bonds expires.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now there are some grant funds that will come with this project. There's ARPA funds, about 1.1 million. There's some loan forgiveness. So the ARPA is 920,000, and 1.1 million is loan forgiveness, or they call principal forgiveness. So you take it up at the beginning of after construction when you finalize your loans. There's a potential that we could receive up to 49% of another 1.2 million if it's related to lead service abatement. some of the rulings that EPA is still working on, which has been really difficult to get answers from, is what has to be replaced. If they find lead in a service, if the service is copper, you just have to replace the section that's lead. If the service is galvanized, you have to go all the way to the meter in the house. It used to be you just go to the property line, now we have to go to the meter. So this is quite an expansion of what we'd have to do. We hope we don't find any. We have a lot of brass line, but that's not, they actually haven't ruled on how brass will be handled. So we don't know if we're going to have to replace those lines or not. But there was a number of those, 100, 150 or so.
So will we go into the town for 7.8 or the 5.8?
It's the bonding capacity for 7.8, but we'll get loan forgiveness for that.
Okay, so we won't use up, hopefully we won't have to use up all of the bond
Yeah, we will get
authorization.
Roughly $2 million in grant up front, and then we may get more if we find more lead. So
Okay, so we're going to go to the town for 7.8 million, and hopefully we won't have to use all of that.
correct.
Okay.
But it's also going to be paid back through water fees, right?
Yes.
So it's not, I mean, we're borrowing the money, but the people who are on town water will.
Right. Only people who are paying for it are
their
the
rate.
consumers of the water.
Right.
Correct. Okay, so any further discussion? So what do you, Bill?
No.
So what, you need a motion from us to
Put it on the warrant,
move
right?
forward with a bond issue of 7.8?
Yeah, I think you can just close the public hearing, and because we have the entire warrant that's up for review and discussion next week.
Okay, so you don't need a recommendation out of this public hearing?
I think.
Other than that statement, I think we're fine.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think it hurts for us just
Just
to
in
say,
case.
just in case you need it.
Sure.
I move that we move forward.
no harm.
No, right.
Right.
Let's just do it because
I
we
move
don't want
that
to
we
get
move
called out.
forward with a $7.8 million bond issue for town meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
So further discussion would just mean that's the maximum, but we anticipate we won't need that much
Correct.
due to
But that'll all
grants and other issues and good management.
be a part of the explanation at town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Passes. And I close that public hearing. How about opening up another public hearing? I love using this thing. I open up a public hearing for the issuance of bonds and notes related to the wastewater treatment facility. If you thought the last one was big, hold on. Wastewater treatment facility proposed capital budget. Peter, you're up.
Right. So we have a permit to discharge our sewage to the river. The permit's up for renewal. We've been alerted over many years that when the permit is renewed at some point, we will have a nitrogen limit. We never got an answer when that would be, or what that would actually be, what the level would be. So it was very difficult to do any long-term planning. And when we initially knew of the concept or the requirement, if we had been able to do a project back then, it would have been a much smaller number. But unfortunately, we didn't have that knowledge or that requirement. So now it's a much bigger number. The nitrogen limit will happen. We're not sure exactly when this year, but it will be this year that the permit will be renewed. And it will set the limit at 10 milligrams per liter, which is a level that our plant can't achieve. We rarely can achieve that level in even our best month. So we are typically over that amount. And the system wasn't designed to remove nitrogen. So that will require a change in the way our system operates, which is additional tankage, control systems and pumping and recirculation. So there's some actual additional chemical processes that have to take place. So there's a lot of technical pieces that have to be designed for that. At the same time as we have equipment that's aged out, we were hoping around this time that we would just take the loans that we had passed back in 2008 and 2003, and we'd be replacing equipment instead of doing large upgrades. So that equipment we anticipated would have to be replaced around this time. So that is coming up to near its end. And there was a number of projects that weren't completed as part of those upgrades because there was more things that the state found that we needed to do when we did those upgrades. One is an outfall extension that was not anticipated. So there's a number of life safety issues that need to be addressed. There are manholes that have bare wires in them. There's control panels that are dangerous. There are air quality issues in the building, heating and ventilation, poorly insulated block walls, so very big energy hog. Just the building heating is horrible, and air quality in there is pretty difficult for the staff. So the combined of all those projects totals out to $22 million, a big number. I had a hard time saying it the first time when they told me what the number was. So the timing of the project, there's some actual timing things that will work in our favor. So the bonds that we have currently will be paid off in 2028. The project will be completed if we started this year. Design, construction will be done around the same time. You have 1 year after substantial completion before your first loan payment. So our first loan payment will be the year after the other bonds are paid off. So we'll have that bonding capacity, which is roughly $606,000. We will have to raise our rates incrementally over the next 6 years to get to that point, so that we have a rate that's not going to be a big rate jump. So it's could be anywhere from a 12 to 15%. It all depends on what else goes up as things go. So we anticipate between 12 and 18% over the next 5 to 6 years that we'll need to raise rates related to this project. So that's really kind of the big picture. There are some grant monies. 10% forgiveness is there's $2.2 million we will get. We are eligible for $4.8 million of the state aid grant, which the state has not funded. We meet the criteria, so there's potential at some point there might be an additional $4.8 million that we could potentially get in future years. But at this point, it's not something that's in the state budget, and I don't see it happening anytime soon.
So two things, Peter. The decision to increase rates in anticipation of this is a decision we'll make year by year as a part of our rates and fees
Yes.
scheduling. So that's not a given.
Correct.
Okay, I think in terms of we should not present it as a given.
Well, I wanted to give you some sense of what the magnitude would be.
I think the magnitude is, if we do nothing until the time we put this in place, we could be looking at a 15, 16%
Yes.
step function at that point in time, if that's the way we choose to manage it.
Correct.
Okay, and so tonight we're looking for approval for 22 million
Correct.
to go to the town for 22 million bond issue that will deal with this issue.
Yes.
Okay. Questions of Peter?
Did you, so at town meeting, we'll discuss it. Hopefully this goes forward. Is it a vote? Australian or is it town?
Australia. These 3/5 ballot.
It's so it's an Australian
Yes.
ballot, so it's on
Both
ballot.
of the bonds will be.
Okay, so it's not something we discuss at town meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll discuss it, but then there'll be polls will be open for an hour after the discussion.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification. So we authorize it now, but it doesn't some of the money will be spent, but we don't have to pay it back for 4 years. I mean,
We don't pay it back
until
until 1 year
it's
after
functional.
substantial completion. Yes.
Okay,
So it's going to be
That seems
2020, the
so we can borrow money for
FY29, so
nothing.
sometime in 2028, after July 1st, 2028, right number. So that budget year is where you'll see this,
Okay.
the impact of it.
So I guess my comment was directed as how we present this in the written material. And I think it should be said that it represents a potential, it represents on based on current rates, 16% or whatever the number is, increase at that time
At FY28,
at FY28.
29.
FY29.
And we may choose to level that curve, but that's a decision we make each and every year as we do our rates and fee schedule. Okay, so I just want to make sure we don't lead the public to think that we're going to incrementally get there. We may, but that's a choice we make every year. Okay.
What are the pros and cons to doing that? So you don't get hammered in year 5, you don't get hammered with 50%.
Well, if you start earlier raising the rates, you actually will accumulate some reserve. You could actually pay that down some. You could actually make it less of an impact because you'll actually set aside some of the money up front.
Yep.
So you could cut some of those costs, upfront costs down a little.
The negative is generational equity.
Right.
Who pays? You know, you're paying, anyway, I think
But it's
the pros and the
not
cons
really
are pretty obvious.
generation, it's
Pardon?
like 5 years. That's
No, but
like
it's a 20-year
quarter.
bond. It's a 20-year bond.
It's a quarter of a generation.
whatever.
Yep.
It is what it is. Okay, so.
Just a question.
Yes, Bill.
How's our current rates compared to other towns?
Our rates wastewater rates are substantially lower than other communities. Even after this
I think
full
that's
rate increase, we still would be below the 2019 state average by about $100.
I think that's a key point, just so our public knows that.
And we're substantially lower than Lebanon's rates too. Their rates are quite a bit higher.
And again, this has been coming at us for 5 years, so we've kind of,
Seems like we've been talking since I've been here.
I think
You've been talking about it since I've been here.
I've made mention of this at every town
like
meeting that
8
I've
years.
had the privilege to present. Okay, so I move that we authorize a $22 million bond issue for town meeting.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm now going to close that public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Well done,
Good night.
as always.
This is like a sneeze now.
Yeah, chief, this is just sets you up, baby. I open up a public hearing.
Oh, many times, those kind of numbers.
Yeah, you don't want to do it the other way around.
I open a public hearing to discuss the bond notes related to the fire engine purchase. Again, this is something we discussed quite extensively, actually, during the budget hearings, but can you give us a quick overview?
I'm Marty McMillan, I'm the Hanover Fire Chief. Captain Letzen is in charge of our apparatus and has been working with one of our apparatus manufacturers and builders that we have typically have won the bids in the past. Doesn't mean we're locked into that, but so we're coming to ask you to appropriate 1.2 million in a bond to purchase a new fire apparatus that will be put into service in FY26. So we replace, we have 3 engines in operation. We run them for 21 years. They're on a 7-year cycle. And currently, because of supply chain and all the things that are going on and after COVID, we're looking at about a 2.5-year build point that we actually sign a contract. So normally we in the past have used CIP, but we're up over that $1 million limit that we typically are going to bond and start bonding. So this will give us the ability to lock in at today's price. And there's a little bit of cushion in that 1.2 because there's a couple of unknowns when the next price increase will come. And the big issue is the builder of our motor is Cummins, and Cummins is in a process where they're going to make a certain number of motors. They're in a slot, people slot them, and then after that, there's going to be a $50,000 price increase because there are some new emission standards, and that's going to add $50,000 to the price of a motor. So we're trying to get in under that and actually save that 50 grand and a price increase that's about 75,000. So I anticipate that 1.2, if we can make this happen, will be a substantial savings and we will not use the entire 1.2.
So it's my understanding that we're doing this for 2 reasons. One is to get in the queue so that we can actually get delivery in 2 years.
Correct.
And in that process, we also save approximately $200,000 of price
Potentially,
increases.
yeah, depending on when those price increases come down.
So
So
that's
I'd like to get in under the wire on the next price increase, which on $1 million, they've been averaging around 7.5. So just the next price increase alone would save us 75. If the motor gets tagged on that, that's 125. And if we were to continue with a 7.5% price increase for the next couple of years, it's just
So
going
that's the logic why this idea took traction during our budget hearings, is to get in the queue so we actually can get an engine 2 years from now and potentially save a couple $100,000.
Correct.
And okay,
So, question.
please.
I appreciate saving the money, but we also have 100%. We have some goals in terms of our carbon reduction standards, and granted, transportation isn't till, we're punting till 2050 on that. But, if we can get an engine that has less emissions, I'm not sure. I think we should
look at that.
Well,
And I'm not sure what the difference would be. The nice thing about a fire truck is we don't run it all day long, right? And so our overall footprint is relatively small. I will give you a little insight on the electric side of the business too. But a couple of years ago, we looked into buying purchasing an electric fire engine, and the last one we bought was around $600,000. It was creeping up when we looked at it. The price was a couple of years later around $800,000, and the number was to go from an $800,000 diesel engine to electric was double in price, $1.6 million. The charging station that you would have to put into the firehouse was another $300,000. And after 2,000 hours of operation, you'd have to put a new battery system in that, and that was a couple $100,000. So it's a considerable expense to go that route. And once the technology gets there, I think that's a wise choice, and that's what this community would like us to do. But just keeping in mind that to do that's probably going to be a double in price on the number. And I think we want to make sure the technology is there. Some of the fire engines they're actually building right now are electric with a diesel motor so that they can charge if you're on an extended operation, or you got to bring a generator to plug into your fire truck if you're going for like an all-night situation. But I think the technology will eventually get there, and if the community is willing to spend that kind of money, I'm all for it.
Question on sort of like the I worry about heavy duty electric applications as well, especially in this climate, because a reduction in that capacity on a bad winter day would be bad too. But are there other vehicles, and this is something I don't know if we've really thought about beyond even the fire department, but 4x4s, snowmobiles, boat, are there other vehicles that sometimes actually have worse emissions that have better consumer electric products that are worth thinking about? Maybe not for this year, but in future years. That if we can offload a little bit on those things first.
Sure.
While we wait for that.
We've talked about that. I mean, that's not a novel idea. I mean, these guys have brought it to us before. Right. And I totally get, we've had this discussion in terms of fire apparatus. I'm just saying that the difference is we're not talking electric, we're talking diesel engine and emissions from that. And so I just raised the question that, hey, we may be saving $25,000 to $50,000 because we're getting in under the old emission standards. But is that short-sighted? Is all I'm saying is that we're
kind of locked into whatever the time that they decide to slot us in and whether a motor's available. If you wanted us to really pursue that and we said, hey, we want to put that type of money into that type of motor, can we do it? And would that delay us? And if it would, how much? 6 months or something? We could certainly look into that and ask that question, knowing that we probably will spend an additional $50,000. But I'm willing to explore that. And Scott can do you
Scott,
have any?
maybe you can just
talk
some sense into me.
Sure. The current build of this truck, actually, this current engine has emissions. Our newest engine, which is engine 3, also is an emission truck. The truck that we're going to be replacing, which is engine 4, is pre-emissions. So the newest trucks that we are purchasing do have emissions. So
standards.
Emission standards. So it's not that this motor does not have built-in emissions, because it will have the strictest emissions to current date.
Like of anything in our fleet.
Just like everything. So you have all the diesel exhaust fluid and all that. So even our current engine has that. So it's not that this motor will not have it. It's just it may not have the newest one in 2.5 years.
The stepped up technology is going to just make them cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. Every time they upgrade, just more expensive.
It's a little bit of let me just say it's tough in the emergency services with the emissions, because some things, like in a consumer's car versus emergency, where you have to have them running and idling or high idling for extended periods of time during extended operations. So they really have to, it's more money to put in emissions in those vehicles, because they have to kind of tweak how they operate.
Our next two Chiefs vehicles, we try to run those 10 years. I would fully expect that we would do some type of hybrid combination with that. And keep chipping away at it. Glad to do it.
Okay. Have I made a motion on this one?
No.
I move that we go to town meeting with a $1.2 million bond issue for this purchase of this fire equipment.
So second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Chief. Well done.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the homework. I close that public hearing.
Thanks for coming, guys. And your work.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a request to approve an administrative abatement of interest, which was for 6 Webster Avenue in the amount of $129 and something cents.
I move. Recommend that.
I'm recusing myself on this.
$129.11. Okay, thank you. Did I move it?
I move.
Oh, good, thank you, Bill. Second it?
I'm recusing.
So second.
Okay.
It's a frat at Dartmouth.
Oh, I got you.
It's not Dartmouth owned, but
Oh, better
stand
safe
right
than
out of
sorry.
this one.
Okay, so we have a motion and seconded. Any further discussion?
No, but just like be a basic mailing issue that got delayed and.
Yeah, it was a, yes, so this is recommended by the assessing office that we abate this particular interest charge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's abated.
And I do have a memo that will probably be on for next meeting. Just there were some questions about which different things come from the assessing office and what's the role of the advisory board of assessors and the select board. We do have that basically finished. We just didn't get it done in time for
Yeah.
tonight. There were some questions about that.
And if you have an opportunity to increase the administrative limit, I think
Okay.
this board
I
would
don't
welcome.
That would be a
I
highly
think this board would
recommended.
welcome
Okay.
that.
I don't think,
I'll look into that. I'm not
it
sure.
might be in our lifetime that hasn't been adjusted, but I just think it's a long time. It's been a long time, and it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense from a practical, management should be able to deal with these issues. not
Yeah,
the select board.
I'll look into that and let you all know.
Next order of business is to reappoint Chris Kennedy to the Sustainable Hanover Committee. Anyone from Sustainable Hanover like to move that?
So moved. Excellent, man.
Seconded?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And this is a reappointment of Chris, so for another 3-year term, so.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Chris, for your
Thank you,
continuous
thank you.
support.
It's
Banner request.
call to lead.
Banner request, this has all been set up. Call to lead banner for Dartmouth College for May 14th. This is all good to go, approved, works for us?
Banner, yep.
Okay.
My only naive question is, if I'm not aware of what this is, and I see the banner, I'm gonna say, what is this? That's just a critique from the sideline. If that's what works for them, I'm fine.
If you can read the yellow writing, which is
A campaign for Dartmouth, but what's a campaign for what? Well, I know that. I'm just being a little snarky. That's all. Just felt the need, sorry. Move on.
Okay. Has there been a motion, or was it seconded? I can't remember.
Probably the man in Snarky has moved it,
You moved the banner request?
Yes.
and I seconded it.
All right. Bill moved it. Nancy seconded it. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are you abstaining? Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Sorry. It's dozing over here.
Okay. So we have a wonderful donation to the Etna Library from Robert Silverman. And I move that we accept his donation. I guess we have two actually. We have a $50 one and we have a $300 one from Anonymous. And so we thank Anonymous as well. So I hear a motion to accept these gifts.
So moved.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I promised Nancy we'd try to get us out of here in time for the ball game. So we're moving right along.
Ball game's up.
I don't know. Approval of the minutes. Okay, I'm going to slow us down here a little bit, I'm afraid. Let me pass this out. My sense was that, okay, hold on. I did a little, Am I correct that this is the meeting in which the trustees were actually there?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so I rewrote the
Good.
first part of it.
good.
Let me show you what I rewrote.
They were in attendance.
They were in attendance. And this is all,
They will
this
be
is all
there.
the wrong tense and the wrong.
Yep.
So, you can pass this down also to Alex. So this is my edited version of the first
Even at one.
section. I'd let you just read it and I'll try to, I think you'll see where I've made changes, but why don't you read that? I think that more accurately reflects the meeting itself.
Yeah, I think it should be noted that I asked if any requests had been received for percent funding to date, and the answer was no.
My answer was I was gonna look into it.
Okay, then maybe we should say that.
Which is that?
It's the second to the last paragraph.
Select Board Wickham asked,
If we'd received requests for the percent fund this year,
for additional requests, or for additional
additional.
percent funding.
and Alex said he would look into it. That's
Okay.
actually not what I remember, but we'll go with it.
Okay. I think I remember I don't think so,
I don't
but let
think
me
so,
check
yeah.
and get back to
So
you.
that's fine,
Yeah.
so let's just rephrase it, so.
So it would read, Select Board Member Wickham asked if we've received requests for additional percent funding.
Yeah.
Additional FY
Funding for-
'24 percent funding.
Funds. Alex,
Town Manager Alex
to look into it.
agree, we'll look into it. Okay. Any other changes or additions to those minutes? Hearing none, I move their approval as amended.
So second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, they are approved as amended. Administrative report.
Nothing for me today. I'll have one next week.
Okay,
Are we meeting next week? 17th?
10th.
The 10th,
Yeah, and then
And
not
the
on the
sev-
17th.
okay.
And not on the 17th.
Correct.
Okay.
some of us won't be here.
But yes, on the 24th.
I don't think on
Yeah,
the
so
24th.
so the 10th is the official public hearing for the warrant and all
Yep.
that stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
all that stuff.
And
Okay,
our hope was that would cover all our business for April.
oh, good, and then we'll just be back on, to go in May.
Yep.
The first Monday, no,
Probably.
yeah, so May 2nd. Or May 1st.
I'd have to look at my phone.
May
to see what
First,
it is.
I think, yeah.
Mayday.
Okay,
Okay.
Select Board reports.
Hanover Bike Walk Committee met this afternoon at 4, and they will be reaching out to Alex as well as to the other Alex to present a summary of the Hanover Bike Walk Committee to us and to the planning board, with the idea that in the past, the last bike walk plan was approved by this board because the planning board was doing no planning. and we adopted it in 2012. But given that we're in the throes of the sustainability master plan, the sense is that it should be incorporated in the master plan because it's so focused on so much of what the public comment has been about in terms of safe walking and biking and, you know, great downtown.
Okay.
So that's, they will be coming to Alex to come and do a presentation in summary, and will give us it's a very long document for us to read beforehand should we choose. And they will also do the same with Alex Taft to get on the planning board agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
Good, excellent. Yes.
Oh, there are other things.
Okay.
There's like walk to school day, and there's a bike rodeo on April 30th, and then I'll find out the exact dates of bike and walk to school, which are in May. Okay,
Very active group.
they're good.
Very
good
active group.
of people. Yep.
Good. Nancy?
Your planning board meets here tomorrow night at 7:30. We're going to be continuing work on an applicant's request for the first private development on West Wheelock Street. And we are also considering a request from the Dresden School District about redoing the track. So that's a...
Could you talk to us a little about the first private development on
Yes.
West Wheelock and what we should be anticipating and what's happening tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night is going to be the second public comment period. So if you have public comments, it is the property just down towards the river from the end on the same side as the Christian Science Monitor building. And there's a very modest building there now. The plans are for a much more ambitious structure. And I'd really like the meeting to be well attended because I know that there are a lot of folks who have a lot of questions and about soils, about how much things can support and so forth. Yes. My colleague just sent me a note that it is that the current structure has 19 beds. I called it modest, 19 beds, and the plan is for a building that could accommodate 94 beds. So when I talk about it being much larger,
Redevelopment. It's the first big move for West Wheelock Street.
That is a result of last year's zoning changes that were
Yes.
adopted at town meeting.
yes.
So there'll be underground parking and 4 stories on top of that.
And the individual who owns this property owns other property on the street. So this may be a template for
Future.
large projects on down the street. So if you care, if you're not an immediate abutter, you are still very welcome to come.
The tire is about to hit the road.
Tis, yes.
And the application is online, I think, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
you
as
can
much
go to the
information.
website
You can, yes,
and
and
learn
see
all about it if you want.
Right, yes, please do.
I have nothing to report, Bill.
At our last select board meeting on March 28, we discussed the budget in quite a bit of detail and approved it, and the Hanover Finance Committee participated in that discussion, made some suggestions which were helpful. The next day, on March 29, the Hanover Finance Committee met, and after, again, some discussion and debate, it was a unanimous vote to support the proposed budget from the select board. So I want to just thank the Hanover Finance Committee, in particular Kari Asmus as the chair, for all their work and effort, and I look for their support at the town meeting.
Good. Yes, excellent.
Great, it was a lot of work
A lot of work.
by a lot
Kari
of
was
people.
amazing.
Thank you.
Her help. Everyone helped. It's really good.
And
Kari was
they
amazing.
are willing and I'll look forward to publicly supporting the budget.
Yes,
Great.
that's their statement.
Yep.
It's a
Okay.
joint effort.
Yes. Any other business? Having none, there's been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91A3L
And E.
and E.
Bill Garrity, yes?
Peter Christie, yes.
Nancy Carter, yes?
Joanna Wickham, yes.
We are in non-public session. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Good
Thank
night.
you.